our...
Did you mean to bring ink pad?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
I didn't mean to bring that one. That one was a backup in case I didn't have the one that I had or it didn't work for some reason.
What do you need an ink pad for? Okay. Tell me later.
Remember when I told you I had a surprise for you?
Yeah.
Here's the actual ink pad.
Ooh, it's a good color.
Yes. Good color for that.
Yes!
Tell the people what you're holding.
Oh, we're recording. Okay. Oh my gosh, this is fantastic. Wow. Okay, I am holding in my hand a custom-made stamp of our True North podcast logo that Ryan designed and created. So it is Polaris, the constellation. It is the color blue. Wait a second. And a little journal I recognized that my friend Birdie made for my gratitude class.
Which I attended. With all kinds of cool paper. So I thought it'd be neat if we actually,
this is fantastic,
on the podcast, created the next version of our logo, which would be the same thing that it is now, only stamped.
Yes.
On one of these papers.
Okay.
So you pick the paper and I'm going to try to ink this.
Ooh, this is going to be tricky. Birdie put in lots of good paper in this baby.
This is also going to be tricky because I don't really know
how to get it
if
all.
this is going to work.
Let's see. I've got some old school vintage paper. Let's go with one that is, packed front and center.
Okay.
White, few lines.
You ready?
Yes.
Should be an angle.
No.
Okay.
This is so exciting. I almost said magical.
Don't know how hard I'm supposed to push.
If you push too hard, then the spots that are, of course, I don't know my words this morning, that are not supposed to come out if they have ink on them. Yeah.
You ready?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh my gosh! That is so cool! Whoa, that is amazing.
This is our new logo.
That color is so rich.
It's kind of neat. And there's one spot I really forgot to press down and there's a giant hole and it's bothering me.
Oh, it's bothering you? See, I actually kind of like it because it's sort of that wearing away. It looks like it's in its very raw state.
All right, well, that's the raw.
Oh my gosh, I love it. Okay, we will show you.
Well, you're going to see it because it's going to be the new cover. That's cool.
Perfect.
Isn't that neat?
It is very neat. Holy cow, I love this.
Welcome to the True North podcast.
Good morning.
Where two practicing light workers get together for 2 hours once a month to talk about all things wholeness and healing for body, mind, and soul, from the spiritual to the metaphysical to the downright practical, to help you find and follow your true north. I'm Abby, this is Ryan, and I did that backwards.
You said I'm Abby.
That was all off the cuff.
I am Abby.
I don't actually even know what I
Ryan.
just said.
No, but you are here to join us. I'm going to adjust my mic, so sorry, listeners, if that sounds crazy in your ear.
I'm not going to edit it out.
Okay, that works. Yeah, so here we are. We are 50 plus listens, so
we have
thank you,
81
listeners.
Listens as of yesterday.
This is fantastic.
That is 40 listens to episode 1 and 41 listens to episode 2.
Excellent.
So one of you fuckers needs to go back and listen to the first one because that's super weird.
Or maybe one person listened to episode 2 twice.
That may have been me.
Right. Can we take ourselves out of the analytics somehow?
I don't know. We have to have at least 3 episodes live before it will give us analytics.
Yeah.
So after this, then we will really be in business. But this is actually... So we're doing this part 1, part 2. Because we're doing this in one sitting and it just makes more sense.
Yes.
So I don't know if this is episode 3 or episode 2, part 1.
Oh, right, because... oh, there go my S's again. Oh, that's... Well, I don't know.
I think it depends on whatever platform people are listening on because they do the numbering.
Yes.
So maybe we'll just say this is part 1 of the second sitting.
or episode 3, whatever you want to call it. Here we are, part 2, session 1,
Session
episode
2,
3,
part 2,
in total.
episode 3.
Oh yeah, see?
So I have to jump in with something.
Okay, jump in.
We talked about exercising last time and the body processing the emotions.
Yes.
I think that was like the last thing we talked about. Like we were talking about it and then we just stopped because that was our time. Mm-hmm. But this has been, I have been waiting to come back and tell you this because I have a slipped disc, which has caused me a great deal of nerve pain. Mm-hmm. And down my leg, and I've seen several doctors for it, and I'm doing some rehab for it, and it's my first time ever having something happen to me like this. Like I have broken my wrist twice. I've been pinned between a car and a wall. I've experienced a good amount of pain, but nothing ever like this. And to drive it home, there was a point where I wasn't even able to walk without like holding onto a wall or something. Like I would like crawl along the couch like a zombie person, and it looked, I just had this weird kind of like goblin hobble, and it was just a lot. It was just really, really, really painful. And Glenda was doing her best to like help me get through the day and do you need anything and can I help you? But at one point I was just like, I just need to figure out how to function. And so she kind of was doing her own thing, and then she walked into the room and I was just hunched over the bed crying. And she said, "Are you crying?" And I said, I don't know. Like, I think so. And it wasn't until she asked me that I realized I was crying because of how much it hurt. And then it wasn't until I realized I was crying from the pain that I don't remember the last time I cried from pain. I had to have been a kid. I know a lot of every like traumatic experience that I have where I can remember feeling a great deal of pain. There were no tears. And here I am sitting there just crying like a little tiny kid. And then she goes over and starts trying to work it and do some flexibility or mobility or see if that helps. And of course that made it worse. And at one point I was literally writhing in my bed with my face in my pillow. And it wasn't just crying anymore. I was weeping. I was like sobbing. It was all just coming out. And at some point I realized I am not crying about the pain anymore.
That's the message that just came through.
Yes. And I was able to, because whenever that happens, like I disassociate. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but it is what I do. And I started watching the thing play out. This is crazy, Ryan. You are writhing in pain and crying and weeping and bawling. And this is not like you. This is not something that you do. You've never really done this. And where is this coming from? And then when I recognized that I was like, the pain was still there and it was still causing the reaction, but once the floodgates had opened, they opened. And all of a sudden I recognized all of those tears had names. Like, oh, now you're crying about the relationships with your godkids that isn't what it used to be. Now you're crying about your situation at work. Now you're crying about your marriage. And it was almost like it was coming in waves, and I could identify all the different things I was crying about, and it just all came out at once. And it's at one point it stopped hurting. I didn't even feel my leg anymore. I didn't feel the nerve pain. I didn't feel any of that. And I was still just heaving. And I just decided to let it all out because it needed to come out. But it reminded me of what you said in our last session about how the body needs to express our emotions. And exercise is one way to do that. But at some point, your body responding to your emotions is the way that it releases them. And in that moment, once the crying started, I released so much that I was holding in about so much. And then after that moment, I realized that my leg didn't hurt as much.
Interesting.
It still hurt. Like I'm still limping, and I still have to go back to rehab and do my exercises with my like lacrosse balls and stuff. But it's manageable. And that moment really, really released a lot of the pain and the stuff that I was holding.
So So this is what I was wondering. When you told me about your leg, I thought, okay, there's something more to it. It's like, this is how your body is choosing to get your attention, that there is something you are not processing. And it had to get very loud, I think, for you to pay attention. But it sounds like what you were doing was grieving. So tell me more about that. Were you afraid to grieve? Were you trying not to grieve? Didn't think that was an emotion you needed?
The weird thing is I don't generally have a problem crying in front of people. I was actually at my desk this past week, and I just felt it coming on and I let it come out. And I wasn't weeping, I wasn't making noise, I wasn't all sniffly. I had a normal face, but tears were coming out of it. I just decided to let it happen.
Was that around your dad's birthday, or was it something else?
I think it was on my dad's birthday.
Yeah.
Like, it was just in there, it had to come out, and I let it come out. And I have a coworker who sits at a desk facing me off to one side, and whenever she needs to talk to me about something, she'll just peek her head around the monitor. And so she did that, and I saw her. I didn't look at her. I saw her head come out, and then it went right back in. And I didn't feel shame about that. I didn't feel embarrassment. I didn't feel anything about being seen crying. But when she walked in and asked me, "Are you crying?" the first thing I did was cover my face. And even that felt weird. Like, my body was telling me I didn't want to be seen crying those tears. And even when she was sitting there messing with my leg, I was shoving my face into my pillow. And I think maybe that's because I was also screaming into it and I didn't want to scare my baby. But I think there was something to be said for just me trying to hide it. Like, there was a shame element, which is weird because I don't...
Shame in the tears, or what... Whatever brought this on was triggering shame?
I'm not sure. It just felt like shame. And that's weird because I've cried in front of, like, I gave a talk in front of a room full of 50 of my closest coworkers and cried about stuff. And
right.
There was no shame there. But in this moment, crying these tears, it was flavored by some kind of shame thing.
Mm-hmm. So have you gotten curious about it?
I have. And every time I talk to my guide, she keeps harping on the same thing. She keeps saying, most of what you're experiencing is not real. Focus on what is and focus on what you're going to be.
Sounds like the Buddha book.
Yes. Yes.
It does not exist.
It doesn't exist. She's really pushing me to let go of illusions. And she's really just bringing it back to, you're having an experience. I need you to learn how to differentiate between the things that are illusions and the things that are real. I'm being pushed to do that. And that's really tricky. Because it all feels real.
Right, exactly. It is. And our minds will do a very good job of convincing us that it is real.
Right.
So practice. More practice.
It's tough.
It is.
But there's also a success story in there. I think I'm getting better at the whole no self thing. Mm-hmm. Because we talked about there's the event, there's the thought, there's the emotion from the thought, and then there's the behavior. Mm-hmm. And I'm in this really kind of weird, awkward situation at work where I just don't know what my future is going to be. I don't really know how it's all going to play out. And it makes a really big impact on the trajectory of my life from this point forward. And it would be very understandable for me to have a lot of negative feelings, a lot of fears, a lot of anxiety, losing sleep over it, and I'm just not. I don't have any of those feelings that you would expect me to feel. Mm-hmm. And people even want to. I've confided in a few people about the situation, and people are all ready to be up in arms about, just in my defense. And I just keep saying I'm not engaging with thoughts about that. I'm just not. Because things are what they are. The situation is what it is. And
right.
Taking my advice of my guide, I'm just kind of saying, okay, who do I want to be? How do I want to show up? Mm-hmm. That's what I'm focusing on. Whatever event happens, whatever things occur, I'm not going to focus on controlling the situation or moving towards a desired outcome. It's just, who am I going to be in that moment?
You're choosing to be responsive.
Yes.
Yes.
And normally I'll just play out. If I'm uncertain about a situation, I have like a bunch of movie screens on the inside of my head, and I play out all the possible ways that it could go. And if this happens, and this happens, if this happens, and this happens, and if this happens, I'm going to do this. And if this happens, and I kind of trick myself into thinking that that's me planning and being proactive, but really it's just me kind of freaking out and trying to control the future. And recently I found out that all that, it's a lot easier to turn it off. And not play out potential scenarios, and instead just say, okay, well, regardless of how a conversation goes or what kind of situation I find myself in, what matters is how I show up and who I choose to be. And when I only focus on that, all of the feelings that would come from all the thoughts just aren't there. There aren't any thoughts. I don't have inner monologue. I don't have conversations with myself about it.
You're choosing to change your thoughts.
Yeah, or just get rid of them.
Or just not, yeah, right. But that's really tricky to do.
Yes.
And your energy seems different today.
How so?
Quiet. Isolated. That's what it feels like.
Isolated.
Like you're not here.
I also am on day 3 of a new ADHD medicine.
Okay.
So it is, the way I've described it is, it feels like all my cells are just in a recliner. They're just kind of like chill.
Yeah. Okay. So let's go back to the crying on the bed. Do you feel that you processed everything?
No. Well, I mean, processed.
How did you leave it?
I have a little bit of trouble with that being a past tense verb because I feel like processing is those things is something that's always going to be happening. Like I'm never going to be able to check it off and say I have processed this thing, And so I have done some processing of some of those things, but a lot of it is out of my hands. A lot of it is I feel a certain way about a situation. Those feelings have expressed themselves. There's nothing left to do. I'm not in a place where I want to take action to try to control those situations or those relationships or make them into what I want them to be. Instead, I just kind of sit with the grief that they're not what I want them to be, let that grief express itself, and then just go back to asking, who am I going to be? How am I going to show up?
Sure.
So I don't know what other kind of processing there is to do other than just.
Well, you're already light years ahead of most people. That's a big struggle. That is a huge struggle to actually choose not to pay attention to that and choose to see it for what it is. And you make a really good point about control. I mean, when you're talking, in my mind, this is what I saw. Control equals suffering. It's like when you're trying to control the situation or what do I need to do next, or you're in it, you're trying to control the processing of it, all of that, you are still suffering. But how many people want control and try to take control? Like, this is a pattern that I see in all the people that I work with. Control is an issue. Yes. That loss of control, I feel, to some people says something about who they are. Like, if they don't have control, that's reflection on who they are. Instead of seeing it as we are one with the universe, there really isn't any control. But when we are sitting in our own human existence and it's singular, a loss of control feels like a loss of self.
Right. It's a loss of agency. While you were saying that, I just had a sentence pop into my head that kind of felt like an epiphany, because I was just going to say yes, because control is an illusion.
Yes.
And then not 5 minutes ago, I said my guide was trying to get me to let go of illusions. And here I am relinquishing control.
Yep.
Not because it was mine that I'm letting go of, but I realized I never had it to begin with.
Yeah.
And so, interesting, because then we also talked about how ego is kind of an illusion. And the ego is the thing that wants to do the controlling.
Yes.
So those are all different pieces to the same puzzle, and I guess I'm just trying to take a step back and look at what picture is on that puzzle. It feels like an epiphany. It doesn't sound like one because I'm super subdued right now, but I would be freaking the fuck out.
I know, I keep waiting. I think he's going to bounce out of the chair or something. It's coming. It's coming.
Oh, man.
Oh,
I also woke up a lot of times last night.
Yeah, I hear you. This lack of sleep business. So, speaking of emotions, as we're catching up, I do want to come back to exercise. Well, let's stay. We're on the exercise path. Have you been exercising? Is that working?
That's the other part of this. So I went to this doctor who does something called Arosti. Have you heard about this?
Arosti?
Arosti. AIRROSTI.
I have not heard of this.
So I don't really know how to categorize it, but I meet with 2 people each time. One person does deep tissue work to release the muscles that are tense around the injured area, because your muscles tense up to protect it, because your body doesn't trust you to keep it safe. And so they will release all those muscles, because all those muscles being tight make you kind of contort the way you do things, and then throw other muscles out of whack, and it's this whole chain reaction. So they get it at the source and they say, okay, these are all the tight things, and it's like really deep, painful, pointed tissue work, fascia release, things like that, to kind of get everything to stop being so tight. And then the second person I go to right after that gives me a series of physical therapy exercises to do with racquetballs and foam rollers and things like that, to kind of reinforce the muscles that are supposed to hold everything in place.
Sure.
And so that's the Arasti experience. And
I didn't realize that's what it was called.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I'm sure there are like a bunch of people who do those things, and maybe it's not. I don't know what makes them think Arasti or not Arasti, but that's what it is.
Okay.
So then I went in, doubled over, back pain, glute pain, hamstring pain, leg pain. Couldn't stand up straight, couldn't do anything, and after getting worked on once, my pain was like from an 8 to a 2, and the physical therapy girl said, you really have to do these exercises, or else it's not, like, we're going to help you as much as we can, but between sessions you have to do all of this, or else it's not going to get better. And then after we're done, you still have to do this pretty indefinitely. And so when you're in that mode, you're like, yes, I will do the things. Give me the checklist and I will do it. And I compartmentalize, and it's in a bubble. But then when I leave there and I start going into everything in my brain merging with everything else, I thought to myself, oh, this is the exercise. Because we talked about me starting to do exercise, and I was like, I'm going to do powerlifting. I'm going to go ride my bike. I didn't do any of it. I did none of it. And then I hurt my back, and my healing methodology of choice involves me moving, and I have to move. And now it's not just you have to move so you can release your emotions. It's you have to move so that you don't walk like a goblin all the time and have all kinds of pain. And so, again, like you said, it's my body getting my attention and getting me to a place where I'm being forced to do exercise and to move my body. And now the stakes are higher. And it's like, fine, you don't want to do it to release your emotions. I'll give you a reason to do it that you'll actually listen to. And give you a jump start with all the crying. And it's very much, I really feel like it's exactly what you said. It's just my body saying, I'm going to stop giving you a choice. Right. So I haven't started working out, quote unquote, but this morning I did my exercises for 20 minutes, and it got my heart rate up. I got a little bit, feeling a little bit like I'd done something, and so it just kind of made me chuckle how if I go long enough not doing something, the universe is going to say, well, now you have to do it.
Exactly, especially because your guide's been telling you to do this, and she said, okay, you're not paying attention, watch this. That's not really how they work, but
right. I'm gonna hurt you. No, yeah. but then the thing that even made the back pain happen was weird, because it was based on something that we talked about. I spent maybe 3 or 4 weeks at my mom's house, and while I was there, she was trying to move a rug that she was on top of, and she didn't realize she was on the rug, and she was the reason why it would move. So she really tried.
Exercise in futility.
Yeah, it was kind of funny to watch. But then she hurt her back trying to do that. And
move the rug with her on it.
Yeah.
Oh, Mom.
I love my mom. And it was so cute because Briggs was over there, and so he goes over and tries to give her a back rub.
Oh, so sweet.
He's never seen a back rub. It's just...
Well, I think your son has some strong intuition.
He sure does.
Yeah.
And so he did, of course, he doesn't know how to do it, but he's like, I think if I do this, like something will happen, And she let him, and I took a little picture of it. It was so cute. But so for the last few days I was there, her back was really hurting. And so I just like, okay, let me just, before I go back home, let me heal you. And I did the thing that we talked about, where instead of trying to force her body to get well, I just built a bridge between that part of her and that part of me. And then I just focus on the healing there. And so, of course, that night she went to bed with no back pain, and she didn't have to take any pain meds, and it hasn't bothered her since. So it was a success. But the next day is when my back started hurting right where hers was when I did the healing.
So do you typically, when you do a healing, do you cleanse yourself so you don't take that?
Normally I do.
But you didn't with your mother.
With my mom. It just didn't occur to me. I was like, okay, I did the thing. What's for dinner?
Right.
It was so out of the norm, because normally I will do some pre-work on myself, and then I'll do the thing, and then I'll do some post-work on myself. And this time I didn't. And so I think we just swapped back situations. Or maybe I just had some energetic thing that was holding mine in place that I gave to her and left myself open, and that little disc was like, boop, I'm out.
Yes, potentially. But you two also have an energetic cord because she is your mother. So this is interesting because I feel like, I don't know, had you cleansed yourself, if it would have worked anyway, if you still wouldn't have had back issues, because in a way, was it triggering something that you needed to address as well?
Well, when we used to do screenwriting, they would say that a really well-made character is one whose flaw is what happens when you take their greatest strengths and push them too far. And so I thought it was interesting.
Say that again.
A well-written character is one whose fatal flaw is the result of taking their best qualities and pushing them too far.
Interesting.
And so it's interesting how this pain, I wouldn't even call it an injury because there was nothing that, I didn't hit my back on something or fall, it just kind of started. But this back pain that led to the nerve pain that led to all this stuff came from me doing a healing on somebody, which is like a life purpose thing, a superpower that's, I just find it so fascinating that those are tied, those are linked.
Tell me more.
Well, I usually think of my healing as a good thing.
Yes.
And this is the first time I did a healing that I actually regretted doing the way that I did, or questioned, or...
Because it affected you?
Yeah, because it came back on me in a really painful way. And so it's more layered now, and it's almost like I have a different relationship with my healing because now there's fear now.
But fear is an illusion.
And also, it's almost like my guide was like, I'm going to speak a language that you understand. You're going to knock yourself out of commission doing a thing that I gave you.
So you made to mean one experience that didn't go well in healing that now blanket across all the rest of the healings you will ever do will bring you pain.
Hopefully not every. That's just. There's now. It's like when you get in a car wreck, you just become a more defensive driver from then on.
Correct.
I feel like now I'm not going to allow myself to approach healing flippantly.
Do you feel you were doing that?
I kind of feel like I was.
Why?
I don't know.
Naive, didn't know any better?
Yeah, well, it was just so weird because, like I said, normally it's almost ceremonious what I do in myself before and after, and it's kind of an event where I have to clear my mind and settle myself. And this time, we were just standing in our kitchen, and I said, "Turn around." And I put my hand where it goes, and I did the thing, and then when it was done, it was done. It was very not that. It was very just casual and laid back, and almost like I didn't respect the craft.
Which could be why it happened. Because healing, I mean, that is very sacred, and it is very important. But even if you fail standing for first attempt in learning, not really failing, I think there's a lot to take out of that. So I think it's more a matter of not sitting in the fear, but changing your perspective about it.
Right. Using that experience to reshape my relationship with the healing.
Yes. I think because even from when you first started healing and you first started talking to me about this, I feel that you are constantly molding it and it's becoming more refined. And so I think this is just another cog in the wheel that you are sorting out that will eventually get you to, well, I don't know if it'll ever, I think it'll constantly be changing. I think it has to. The nature of our existence is constantly changing. So even if we think we're perfect, there's no such thing.
Right.
So you're going to constantly be growing in it, but I don't see it necessarily as a setback. I see it as a very clear message about what it should be. Should. Interesting. Why do I say that? I'm shooting all over myself. That's what we say in the
I
coaching
love
world. When
that
people say, I
phrase.
should do this. I should do this. Stop shooting all over yourself. So that's interesting. Okay, I'm going to process that. But my point being, I say that a lot too. My point being, I think I would just challenge you to get curious about your perception. You're seeing it from fear instead of value.
Well, this last healing knocked me on my ass. I'm limping.
It is. I know, but why? And do you really think it's just from the healing?
I mean, it just could have been the ottoman I was sleeping on for 3 weeks.
Yes, right. There could just be, these are the facts. I slept on an ottoman that no person ever should sleep on.
It just could be that I'm carrying a whole boatload of stress, and that's how my body decided to release it, was just building it up there. But even then, the question is why that part of my body? Why that vertebrae? Why my lower back? If it could have held it anywhere.
Okay, so it's in the sacral chakra.
So the sacral chakra is at the, I guess right there, yeah. It's like between solar plexus and sacral, but closer to sacral for sure. Yeah. Sacral chakra is synonymous with being generative.
Oh,
That is not our time.
that is so our time.
That's our time?
That's our 30-minute halfway.
Our 30-minute halfway.
30-minute
Oh,
halfway.
God.
That means we need to jump to
Okay,
debriefing.
I need to write down a note to process these things. Where?
Writing on his remarkable pad.
No. We are not going to talk about this until they tell us that they're going to sponsor an episode.
This amazing podcast.
They said, no, we're not going to prioritize that right now. And then I go to Instagram and I see an ad for them. I'm like, well, you're definitely advertising.
No kidding.
I'll get them. I'll get them to sponsor this. It is a really great tablet. Where in the body? No, why? Why there? And what was the other question? You asked me another question. Get curious about
Your perception. As seeing it as a place of fear instead of from a place of value is how I said it. Interesting choice of words. No, but it's certainly presenting itself in that area on purpose. But I would also have to agree with you that you are carrying a very heavy load right now. And healers and light workers have to be very clean and very light. Mm-hmm. And it's like you're trying to do your own work in addition to trying to heal others. Mm-hmm. And so I don't think this is a result just of your healing. I think it manifested simply because you've got your own weight that you're trying to unload right now. And it just didn't help the fact, but there may be a way around it after you figure out.
Like this was just a perfect storm of a bunch of things coming together.
Exactly.
Just smacked me in the back. Mm-hmm. That gives me hope because the idea that plants in my mind is once I kind of wrap my mind around all of that stuff and process it and stumble upon some epiphanies that'll help me to learn the lesson, maybe then that will be the end of the nerve pain.
Perhaps that'll be, stay tuned. Yeah, it might be.
Okay, so if you are that one weird person who started on episode 2 and you're just coming in without understanding the actual framework for this podcast, we sat down and had a 2-hour conversation in a coffee shop that we thought was going to be the first episode of this, which ended up being just the pilot that we're going to call the pilot. And
yes.
We're not actually airing that, but we are debriefing that and kind of talking about how it went and how we would have liked to have showed up.
Yes, because we had a lot of really good conversation during that pilot episode, which is why we wanted to go back and expound on it a bit.
Yes, and we also had some could have been better conversation, which we're redeeming ourselves for right now.
Yes.
So I have all the time codes of all the things that we talk about written down here. So we actually decided we're not going to go through every single second of that recording because most of it is just not great.
Fluff.
Yes. So we're going to cut through to the things we actually want to debrief about.
So let's just start at the top of the list.
Start at the top of the list.
Start in on minute 12.
Okay, so here we are talking about me doing the rounds, which is like every night I do laundry, litter box, dishes, and trash, and how if I don't do it, I think it's because I'm lazy. And then you were all like, have compassion for yourself.
I wouldn't say that.
You wouldn't say that 14 times.
Okay, maybe I say that all the time.
A lot.
But it's always a decision. It's not a habit. And I have to decide if I'm going to play the role of the me that's responsible and disciplined and takes care of his house, or if I'm going to play the role of me that just wants to go to bed and says, "Oh, I'll do that tomorrow. It doesn't need to get." You know. And both of those are still playing a role.
Oh, so it's in the framework of how we're still talking about playing roles instead of the essential self, which we really, really talked about a lot in the last episode, but that's where we're at.
True. What's the role of you just going to bed and doing it tomorrow?
Without even checking on things?
Without making rounds.
The me that's lazy and procrastinating and doesn't want to fulfill my commitments to myself.
But who says that's lazy?
Me.
Right, but where does that come from? Because is it lazy? Like I'm questioning you on that. Is that really lazy?
Why are you making that face?
Because it's just my nature. Is it lazy?
Just question all the things.
Yes. I challenge you a lot, I think.
You do. Well, I say a lot of things that need to be challenged.
Is it lazy? Anyway, we can keep going.
Well, I feel like if I've made a commitment to even like, if I made a commitment to do something, even if it's just to myself, and I just choose not to do it because I don't want to work, isn't that like what lazy is? Like if you have intentional downtime that you plan and you're like, today I'm not going to do anything, that's not lazy, that's recovery. Or if you literally just aren't called upon to do anything and you're not doing anything, that's fine. But if I were to make a commitment to myself that this thing's going to happen and it requires me to get off my ass, and then I don't do it because I don't want to get off my ass, then I feel like that's me being lazy.
Okay. I think that's social conditioning. However, not the commitment piece. Not the commitment to yourself. Like if you were committing that you were going to be an active participant in your house and your marriage and your family, then yes, getting up to do those things I think is valid. But not doing them for whatever reason, I don't think is considered lazy. I think that's more of a, I guess I don't feel that you're being compassionate with yourself when you call yourself lazy. Because for whatever reason, there are days when, you know, you need the mental break. Maybe you do just need to go to bed and not do whatever thing for that one day. And say, it's okay not to keep that commitment to myself, and I will not be lazy
It's just gonna
by
not do
doing a
it.
little self-care.
My fear there is that then I will develop a habit of giving myself an out. Like then it'll be easier next time to just decide not to do it. And then all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I haven't done any of this in 4 days. This is even a habit anymore. And then I renegotiate and be like, no, that's not fun. I don't want to do it. And then I just end up not doing any of them ever. And
So at this part in the conversation, I spend like 10 minutes saying one thing. So for the sake of brevity, what I say here is I respond very well to rigid structure. I respond not very well to people imposing authority on me that I don't think they've earned. And I also don't think very many people have earned authority over me. And so I conclude that my best scenario is for me, myself, to impose rigid structure on myself so that I have that framework that I can thrive in and nobody else is imposing it on me and giving me something to push back against. And so then I go on to talk about how I'm a lot more responsive to a lot more responsive to a stick than a carrot from my Southern Baptist upbringing. And so I just kind of bully myself into doing what I need to do, because if I'm not a little bit mean to myself, then I won't do it because I'm used to being bullied into doing it. But I have to do it to myself because I don't like it when other people do it to myself, which was my response to why I'm not compassionate with myself. Because for me, compassion equals leeway, equals slack, equals I'm not going to do it.
Which then is lazy?
It's lazy if I don't. Well, then I guess what I was trying to say was that me calling myself lazy was a way of bullying myself into doing it. Like there's negative self-talk where I then attack my own self-image as a response to me not being what I want to be. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Anyway, I just saved us like 15 minutes.
You did, yes. Thank you. I was thinking. Okay, so what are we doing? Jumping back in?
I'm going to find the end of that. Because then I also told a story that I don't think I need to tell.
So I've been thinking about, since we had that conversation, because I did not like how I responded. Naturally, that's why we're debriefing this.
Right.
I was so nervous that first time. And I am more so today than even in the last two.
Why is that?
I don't know. It's weird. I didn't feel like I was even still showing up as myself in episode 1 and 2. Even though I was a lot more loose and less nervous, I still feel like I didn't say everything I wanted to say.
We should debrief that one on this one.
Oh no, it's getting very layered.
Every sitting, we should debrief the last sitting.
The last sitting. Oh my gosh, this is what I should have said.
How would you have liked to have shown up or done differently last time?
Sometimes I don't always agree with what you are saying, but it is in my wiring to agree with you because it keeps me safe.
You know what?
What?
I don't remember which one it was. There was somewhere in episode 1 or 2 that I was saying something and you were saying correct.
Yes.
And when you did that, I had the thought, you're doing it again. I know, you don't agree, and you're not saying anything.
And I'm not saying anything.
Do you remember what it was? Do you remember what I?
There was a lot of things I said correct to, but there was a big one. But let me go through the list. No, in the pilot where I did not agree with you, but internally, but externally, I kept saying correct.
Correct. Yeah, correct. I mean, the big one that we talked about was the whole we're playing roles. We're always playing a role. There's no essential self. I remember you saying that you didn't agree with that one.
Oh, I didn't agree with that because you were basically saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, that your essential self is still a role that you play.
Or that you never actually express your essential self. Everything you do is
a role that you have to play.
Right.
And I think I was like, correct. And then I listened and I'm like, no, that's bullshit. That is not true. Because if you are staying in your essential self, roles don't exist. You don't need to put on roles. You should not put on roles. That is not the nature.
And this whole thing is a true north.
Self.
If you're following your true north, then you are expressing your essential self.
In every way.
Right.
In every way. In every situation, in every relationship. Which is incredibly vulnerable to do, which is why we put on roles, right? We put on these characters because they keep us safe, because it's very uncomfortable to be vulnerable and exposed. And
so for you, disagreeing with somebody out loud is a vulnerable thing.
Is a vulnerable thing. Yeah. It Yes. So growing up in an environment where I was constantly on eggshells, didn't know if I said something wrong, if I did something wrong, it would set this person off. And just, yes, I'm being vague here, but I'm also being very sensitive to the people that are probably listening that I'm talking about.
One of the 81 people.
Yes. So that it very much then got me to pay attention to how, what my choices and what my words do to other people. And I learned each person and I learned the way that worked for them. And so, did I have this conversation? I'm having deja vu. We're about the Julia Roberts movie. It's probably with someone else then. Okay, good. I'll share. So the Runaway Bride movie where she dates this guy and then they come to a point where they get engaged. The day of the marriage, the wedding comes, and she hightails it out of there. And so she's on like her 5th one, and this New York reporter kind of catches on. Richard Gere. Yeah, thank you. And so he decides to do a story about the runaway bride. And so he's going and he's interviewing all these past boyfriends, and he always asks them the same question: how do you like your eggs? And like guy A would say, oh, scrambled like me, and guy B would say, oh, poached like me. And kind of each guy was something different, and made him realize that she morphs herself into the person that he wanted, the perception of, you know, who he wanted her to be. And so it's sort of the perfect metaphor of that's exactly how I grew up. So if you like scrambled eggs, and I know that was going to keep me safe, I like scrambled eggs too. So then things are safe and they're happy, and I feel some sense of security. So I learned to operate that way, where you don't rock the boat, because if you rock the boat, you have totally fucked yourself. And it will come back in some way as a consequence on you if you don't stay in line with what that person is expecting of you. So I've done a lot of work trying to undo that, but it's there. And that's because we are wired when we're basically wired until we're 25. So we show up with this brain when we're born, and our experiences mold and develop that brain. And then that's sort of what's used the rest of your life as standard operating procedure, which is horrible. It's horrible that your childhood truly determines the rest of your life. And that's why life is practice, because I have to spend a lot of time undoing that. But so yes, when I get nervous, I kind of go back to default, where I will simply just agree with you, even though if I stopped and I kind of became the observer, I would know that that's what I'm doing. But when I'm caught up in nerves, I can't get outside of myself to see it. And so it just happens. And so that's what I did a lot in our first episode. And when I went back and I wasn't in that space, I'm like, no, that's not what you should have said. See, now I'm getting nervous, like I'm saying too much now. I've got to just stop. But
you don't have to stop. You are half of this podcast.
I have stories too.
Yes,
I do. And I have a lot of things to share. But so where were we? Why did we get to that? See, I don't even know where I was. I'm just rambling at this
That was
point.
so much fun to watch.
I'm just nervously rambling to fill the airtime.
Well, no, I have a question though.
Okay.
And this is something that
Save me.
this is going to make it worse for you. But, but you said you've done a lot of work to kind of learn how to undo that.
Yes.
The fear response of being agreeable. Because I'm the same way. I think I just started with a new therapist, and when you start with a new therapist, you dig into your past and you tell all the same stories.
Get to know
and
you.
everything.
Yes.
Yeah. Here's all the backstory, the origin story of this person. And I realized that, I mean, every time I tell it, it gets a little bit more clear to me that part of being a child of abuse, which, by the way, we need to talk about my dad for a second and tell the whole story, because I'm talking about being abused, and then I'm also talking about how he was like the best thing ever, and that makes it seem like some kind of emotional Stockholm syndrome. And something really happened there that we can get into another time. But when you're a child of abuse, I'm learning that you find a way to make it your fault that you were abused.
Correct.
Do you agree? Do you disagree with that?
Actually, no.
Okay.
I do agree, because I spent many years thinking things were my fault.
It was my fault.
So yes,
right. Yes. And we could go into why and how that works and everything, and whether it makes sense.
As a kid, you don't have that logic. You don't have the reasoning to know otherwise.
And you're not brave enough to look at your abuser and say, this is your fault.
Well, yeah,
this is your doing.
They're the adult. They're supposed to be the authority.
So my dad was hitting me for me not really doing things that kids don't do, just being a kid. Mm-hmm. And then I told myself I can't do that anymore, because I got hit because I did that thing. It was all me. Mm-hmm. And to this day, I find myself finding other people's reactions to me to be my fault. If I hadn't done that, they wouldn't have reacted that way. Therefore, I need to change the way I do it to keep them, it's very codependent. Like, I'm trying to protect your emotions and keep you from going off on me, when instead of putting the responsibility on you for being the person who fucking went off when I didn't do anything wrong. So, you said you've done a lot of work to kind of course correct.
Yes.
And my question is, what does that look like? Like, what kind of work did you do? specifically?
It's a good question. And it actually brings me to something that I wanted to talk about, and it's anger.
Oh, I wanted to talk about that too.
Yes.
I just didn't know how to just come out and say it. Yeah.
Well, because I spent a very long time being angry. Angry at everybody. Not a nice person, not always enjoyable, not fun, hard to live with. And so during that time period, it was in my 20s, I was going to therapy, I was quote unquote working on this, but I did not acknowledge my anger, nor did I do anything about it. So nothing worked. So it wasn't until the moment that I decided, okay, if I continue to be angry, like I had this realization one day, and I don't know how or when, but for me, it was really significant at that time in my life. But if I continue to be angry, they win. They win. And that pissed me off.
It made you more angry.
Yes, it made me more angry because I thought, no. I mean, I just was like, I don't deserve this. They put me in that position then, and they're still putting me in that position now, and they're not even in my space anymore. And so it's when I realized, okay, the only way there's going to be any change is if I recognize that I am very angry and do something about it. So then that's when I got very curious, because I started to realize that anger is simply a blanket. It's just a cover up to a whole bunch of other things. And that's when I discovered that I'm very fearful. I felt very alone. I felt incredible amounts of shame, going back to things being my fault, self-worth. And so I kind of pulled back that blanket of anger, really tried to investigate what it was with the help of some therapists. Some of it was just, I'm a fact finder on the Colby Index. So what that means is when I kind of get onto something, I will totally dive deep into that particular subject. So I went and found books and read books. And
So you're a 4 with a 5 wing.
yeah. Huh.
There it is.
Yeah. And so I just tried to figure it out. And then that rolled into forgiveness. But not of myself, which I did not know at the time. I was not self-aware enough to know that I needed to forgive myself and say to myself, you did the best you could with what you had available at the time. Because honestly, I did. I survived. I was a kid. How could I have known to do anything differently? And so I have to have, going back to compassion for my younger self, that you operated in how you knew. It doesn't serve you anymore, so let's move on. But in my 20s, all I thought it meant was I need to forgive everybody else. So I did. And that lifted this huge weight off my shoulders. And all of a sudden, I felt I was having better relationships. I was a lot happier in my life, but I still wasn't forgiving myself. And so there was this undercurrent of something's still not right. Something's still missing. I just didn't know what to do about it. So fast forward then, I end up going to life coaching school. I have a degree in psychology. The reason why I didn't go into therapy is because being an empath, I took on everybody's stuff energetically. And at that time I didn't know it. And so I didn't know what it was or what to do with it. And I just knew that I could not live my life carrying around everybody's stuff.
Right.
So I didn't go that path. I ended up teaching, going to the Y, which is where I met you, other things. But people kept coming to me. I'm the fixer.
Yeah.
For the relationships in my life. When something's not going well in someone's life, I'm the call. I'm the phone call. So somebody said, you should go to life coaching school. And I'm like, what the heck is a life coach? I had to go look it up. I had no idea. I'm like, oh, this is fantastic. Like, this is exactly what I want to do. You help, generally content people just become happier and do really great things and shift their lives. But going through that process, I went to, of course, Martha Beck's school, and she very strongly believes in you have to live it to give it. So I had to go through the process of being coached, and life coaching sounds like a lot of fun, but it is also a lot of hard work. On yourself. Yeah. It's still questioning of things. You just don't look as much into the past, but it's you use that sort of as a benchmark in a way. But so that's when anger came back up. and how much anger I had for myself because I had to go through my own process again. And that's when I really realized, oh, this all starts with me. And then that's where I learned the 3 types of business. There's your business, there's my business, and there's the universe's business. And there's only one of those that you can control. And I spend an awful lot of time in the universe's business and in the other person's business. I don't spend any time in my business, which is where all my suffering comes from. But very long answer to your question is it is continual practice, because I find myself back in a place of anger.
Right.
And I thought I was controlling it. I knew the anger was there.
There's that word, control.
Exactly. That I thought, if I just operate this way, this person won't be mad at me. But I'm operating that way because I am pissed. I am mad about something. And I've sort of gotten back into that place where I've been pushing that anger off on the other person. Like, I'm mad at you because you did this. I'm mad at you because you didn't do that. And I'm coming up for all these reasons why. And the other day, which is why I wanted to talk about this, I was brought back to from the messages of my guides that anger is a blanket. And you are covering something up again. So you need to strip it. Or that's one reason, but the other reason is too, we get angry because we're trying to keep people at bay. If I'm angry, you can't get close to me.
It's protection.
It's very much protection. So then I'm now very curious, like, okay, what the heck is going on? I need to uncover and unpack all this anger that I have. And I've at least gotten to the point now where I am very angry at myself, but I have been doing a very good job projecting that on everybody else that's close to me. I'm getting into sensitive topics because I am like squeezing the shit out of my thumb right now. All right. So what does that look like? Yeah. What does that look like? It's a constant process, but I think it looks like, short answer, you've got to get curious about the anger, the emotion that's coming up. Because if not, and we look at the wheel of there's an event, there's an emotion, the thought. The emotion is anger. I can immediately go into the thoughts of, I'm just angry. You've wronged me in some way.
Right.
And I just have to be the observer. Does that answer your question?
I think it does.
Does it?
I think, because if there's anybody out there who has something like that they're carrying, that they're not dealing with, maybe it's because they don't know how. So then the how is the question. What is it actually? And you work out 6 days a week.
Yes.
And so we talked about how exercise helps process things.
Yes.
But you're still holding on to a lot.
Well, that's because my exercise has changed.
Yeah.
That's a good point to make. I do exercise 6 days a week, not for the sake of exercising. It truly is my mental health, because I do believe that all these emotions are physical. But I've noticed in my exercising that I am not able to recover right now. So I exercised Thursday. I did not exercise Friday because I just felt horrible, which was yesterday. It is Saturday morning. I exercised this morning and I felt like I had just exercised an hour ago. So this is starting to bother me. Like, I have no recovery, which is odd for me. There's nothing wrong. I'm a healthy person. I'm not sick right now. Like, sometimes I can give myself grace, but I'm not in a position where I need grace. And so it just makes me curious, like, what is going on? And I realized it's because I'm trying to control my exercise now. I don't want to process this anger. So I'm exercising, but I'm basically putting a mental block up that I am not going to process it. And so my body is like pushing and pushing and pushing really hard.
It's going to make it hard for you until you do what it's supposed to do. Yes.
And so, damn it, Ryan.
Keep going.
This is why I've been asking myself for a long time, why am I not recovering? Like, I've gone to the doctor and she tried to put me on this medication, which I don't know if I've said before, but I have an aversion to medication. I just don't like to cover symptoms up. I want to know why. Damn it, I just found my why. I am controlling the processing of my emotions. Like I'm not allowing myself to do it. So it's
Specifically the anger.
affecting my exercise. Cause it's like, what's a good analogy? Damn it. Sorry, I'm cussing a lot now because I'm like, okay, all right. I know I've hit a wall. I'm not processing, but you're right. I mean, you just made the point, and thank you for the reminder that this is why I exercise 6 days a week, but now I'm even controlling that and it's not working.
And you're refusing to let the exercise do what it's there to do.
All of that stuff is bottled up inside of me, which is like junk. And that's why it's like my pipes are clogged. There you go. My pipes are clogged.
The thing that's supposed to release it is not releasing it.
Yeah, because I'm not allowing it to.
You're literally holding them.
Yes. And this is what's crazy is, like, I know there's some people out there questioning, like, that can't really happen. But there is such a mind-body connection that, yes, it can. If I tell myself I'm not going to process the emotions through physical exercise, it will happen. It's a physiological thing. And I just realized that's what I'm doing.
You're welcome.
Because yes, I will say this is why I started. Not why I started. This is last year. I turned 40 mid-year, and I went on the journey of the year of the 40. So I started in January, celebrated the birthday mid-year, ended in December, of trying to redefine my life. And I know our time is about up, so I'll say this briefly, and then we can close out. But even at the end of the year, I set out to go find my own rich, abundant wildlife. I've been teaching other people to do the same, and I just realized I am not in that space. I am not living to give it. I was very aware of it. And so I thought, why not at 40? Let's figure this out. But at the end of the year, I'm still left with something still missing. And I've really been avoiding it. And that's the connection I just made. I think I know what it is, which I'm not going to share today. I will get back to you.
Do you want to write it down?
No, because I know what it is.
Okay.
I've just been ignoring it.
Ah.
Yeah. Yeah, I have. And that's why I'm not recovering.
So in part 2, we are going to debrief more than 2 minutes, which is what we got done today.
But thank you for listening.
And we'll see you in part 2.